that's probably, I don't know if you came from people in your family, but let's talk about like what inspired you to pursue that career in the military.
So I always was drawn to the military. I always wanted, very idealistic. I wanted to do something great and bigger than me, and be a part of something bigger than myself, and serve the country. So that was definitely a huge motivator for me. But in a lot of like reflection and having done tons of therapy and lots of the deep work on myself over the last couple decades, if I really dissect why I was really drawn to that, was I think for that validation, right? George needed to prove that George was a warrior, that George was masculine, that George had arrived and he made it, right?
Yep.
And so I had a lot of really good reasons for joining the military, but I also treated it, so that my whole identity became wrapped up in it then, right? Because this is the only thing that's making me a man now. It's the only thing that's getting me away from my past. And at the time, too, I didn't really have much awareness of like how dysfunctional my upbringing was. And it wasn't until I started making tons of bad decisions later in life that I realized, like, whoa, maybe there's some stuff buried down there I need to start ripping out and figuring out what's going on here. So, that, to be perfectly, transparent, that was a huge motivator for me, is I wanted to prove that I could, lead men into battle and be one of them, And I think at the surface level, it's a good natural thing for young men to want to do something great like that. But for me, it was essentially a medicator. It was like trying to get my fix to heal this wound that it was never going to solve,
Yeah. So the George that went into the military, right? Were you 18? Was this no college? You went right into it?
No, so I did go to college. I did ROTC. So I got a scholarship in high school.
Nice.
For a 4-year scholarship to do ROTC. I honestly did not know much about what that meant versus enlisting. I just knew I wanted to be in the Army and blow shit up and, do hua things, right? And so I thought ROTC was going to be like, a lot of Army stuff. I was massively disappointed when I showed up and I'm like, when do we shoot? And they're like, once a year. And I was like, what do you mean once a year? I shoot more now as a civilian. So you really play Army, you learn some basics and that's about it. So I did that for 4 years. Graduated, earned my commission as a second lieutenant. I got assigned to the field artillery, which was also a disappointment. I wanted to be infantry. But in hindsight, I wouldn't change a thing. I loved the route I had and the opportunities I got. So I did the 4-year thing through school. You become an officer, and then you go to more school to learn how to do your Army job now. Okay. And so that's what I did. And then I was assigned to the 101st Airborne when I was 23 or 22, one of those ages. I can't remember. It's been a while now. But 2012 is when I got to the 101st. And pretty much right away we deployed. So showed up, had to learn quick, and got thrown right into it.
Right into combat.
Yeah, pretty much.
Wow. Yeah. And so now this George goes into combat, right? Like, how did that foundation of the military influence your approach to you and maybe your approach to leadership? Like the George that started and then the George that kind of came out, what happened in that? Like, where did you grow or not grow?
Oh, I grew a ton. So I was extremely fortunate, right? I deployed on what was called an advisory team. And so it was very rank heavy. Yeah. Like typically, a lieutenant, if you're in charge of a platoon, you have like 30 soldiers that work under you, right? So I was just one of 14 guys. Most people were sergeants, staff sergeant, sergeant first class. There were 2 junior enlisted, a couple lieutenants, a captain, and a major, right? So lots of rank on a very small team. Typically, there's not that concentration of rank in a team structure for the regular Army. And so because of that, I got to do like a little bit of everything. I got to do soldier stuff. I got to do officer things. I got to lead patrols. I got to be a gunner, on the machine gun in the trucks. And I got to do all these different things that most young officers never get to do. And for me, because I got to spend so much time with these men, most of these guys I deployed with had deployed 3 or 4 times already in 2012, full length, 12 to 15 month deployments. So there was a boatload of experience. And I just soaked everything in, right? I'm sure they're going to see this and comment on it one day and laugh at me, but I was very green, very immature, but they taught me a lot. Like I learned a lot about not just Army stuff, but like how to be a man, you know? And so it was a very positive experience for me. And I also just want to be very clear, like the amount of combat I saw was very minimal. Like I work with people and know people who have
Much
experienced
worse.
significantly more than I did. So I don't want to represent myself as some like Billy Badass who went and, won the war single-handedly. That's definitely not the case. But it was a very positive experience for me. And so when I came home, I felt like I was a man now. I thought I had made it. And then I married the girl. We started dating before I deployed. We stayed together through the deployment and married her.
Oh,
and then we had this fancy wedding. And I was like, man, I'm living the dream. Like I made it. I beat the odds. I've got the beautiful girl. I've got the career I want. I'm a combat veteran now. And I thought my life was just like set up for success and it would never stop. Right. And that lasted about a year and the bubble popped.